Richard, keep my wedding rings and tell Alex and Jacob how much I loved them, and that this is not their fault. I can't do this anymore. I love you. Please understand. I just can't do this anymore.
Suicide, the final act of those who feel life's problems are so overwhelming that the only way they can cope is by ceasing to cope entirely. Angie Fenimore was such a person. But during her suicide attempt, Angie discovered the turmoil she was facing in this life was nothing compared to that which awaited her in the afterlife.
Hell is a matter of suffering, and I was in hell long before I took my life. Where I went was just a manifestation of what I was already experiencing. I wanted so badly just to end my life and to be done, and what I found was that I took all that with me, and it was multiplied, just intensified beyond anything that we even have the power of understanding in this life. And so it was absolutely the worst thing I could do. There was no escape.
Angie was the product of a dysfunctional home. Her mother left early on, and Angie assumed the responsibility of taking care of her younger sister and her father, an alcoholic. The young girl carried out her new role as best she could, but the situation began to deteriorate, and eventually Angie became a victim of psychological abuse, sexual abuse, and was consumed with feelings of utter worthlessness. At 19, Angie attempted to neutralize her ongoing mental anguish by getting married and having children. But she soon realized that having a family of her own would not free her from her secret misery.
I had fought depression for years and feelings of self-loathing that went along with how I'd been raised, and I felt like I was a horrible mother. I felt like I was dooming my children to a horrible existence, and I felt like I was actually going to be doing my family a favor by leaving them.
Initially, Angie thought death would take her to a better place, an idea which had been confirmed by her stepmother.
She had gone up to the corner of the room and seen her body when she had suffered a car accident. She had talked about being embraced by love and warmth and peace and not wanting to return back to her body.
But such a tranquil transition would not be the case for Angie.
My experience was completely different than anything I'd ever heard about. I had a concept of hell, but this was nothing like what I was anticipating at all.
Traditionally, hell has been thought of as the final destination for unrepentant sinners and evildoers. Images of lost souls suffering an existence of eternal torment in a pit of fire are familiar. But Angie's experience of the nether world was not one of physical suffering. Instead, she found hell to be a place of unrelenting emotional distress. Angie's journey into the abyss began one cold January morning when, after failing to end her life by slashing her wrist, she took an overdose of pills and laid down on a couch to die.
When I was dying, I could feel this tremendous energy encompass me, and I could feel my spirit and my body separating. And it was very powerful and far more real than anything I've experienced in this life.
As her spirit left her body, Angie became aware of images racing toward her.
What I saw was actually my very first memory, and that was of being born. And I saw my mother looking at me and cradling me, and then I went through every moment of my life just exactly as I had lived it, only I felt everybody's feelings. I felt it from everybody's perspective, and I had a completely renewed understanding of what my life had been like and what my parents had really been like and what they were trying to do. And I found it very interesting that my mother was such a significant part of my life. I'd forgotten most of my memories with her because she had left when I was 9. And most importantly, I think I understood that she loved me.
As Angie continued to look back on her life, she began to sense that she wasn't alone.
I could feel a presence with me. I could feel a person with me. I knew he was male, and I knew he was viewing my life with me.
Eventually, Angie's review of her life ended, as it began, with her suicide.
I went all the way to the point where I was lying there on the couch, and at that point I was surrounded by darkness.
Angie then felt herself descending into another plane of existence, where she became aware of other disembodied spirits who had chosen the path of self-destruction.
They were all kind of mumbling to themselves, completely self-absorbed, caring nothing about anybody else there or about anything but themselves. What was going on was that these people were reliving this worst experience over and over and over again, reliving this agony that they were in, this turmoil, whatever it was that had caused each of them to take their lives.
Angie, as well, might have been doomed to this ironic existence for all eternity had she not been called upon.
I heard a voice, and it said, "Is this what you really want?" And I looked to see where the voice was coming from.
The words had come from above.
I could see a pinpoint of light that looked just like a little star, and it grew in intensity and came toward me very quickly.
But the light wasn't a star. It was a being who was made of light.
And as he approached, I realized that this was God. I didn't have to be told. It was like the universe reverberated his name. And then he said, "You can't take your life. It's not yours to take. And life is supposed to be hard. You have to pass through these things. All of us have done this." And I was filled, as he spoke to me, with understanding about the purpose of life and what we're doing here and how important it is to think about how you treat other people. And then I felt another presence standing next to him. And I realized it was the same being that had been next to me during my life review.
Though Angie could not see this second presence, she sensed an inexplicable connection with him.
I could feel this incredible love and peace and compassion coming from him, and pain as well. And I knew that this was for what I had done. And then I heard him say, and I still couldn't see him, but I heard him say, "Don't you understand? I've done this for you." And when he said those words, I understood that I was in the presence of the Savior of the world. And I could feel what he had done for me. I was taken into that experience, into when he suffered for me. And I caught that moment of his life and understood that this was a very real and literal thing that had happened. And then I was shown what would happen to my children if I were to take my life and remain dead. And my oldest son in particular was harmed so terribly by the grief and the pain that he would have to suffer through his life that he was rendered incapable of even completing his mission here successfully.
With the knowledge of the potential fate of her children, Angie's desire to die disappeared.
And it was at that point that I was ready to come back. I think I just needed to understand that my life is not my own, that what we're doing here is so important, and every life that we touch is important.
Angie's return to her body was instantaneous.
When I came back, I rushed very quickly through the darkness, and when I opened my eyes, I was lying on the couch, and I could feel all the pain that I'd experienced, the drugs that I had taken, and my husband was coming through the front door at the same time.
Looking back on the incident, Angie now realizes how she came to a place where she felt the need to kill herself.
I didn't get there because other people had done things to me as much as that I had chosen not to overcome the things that are intentionally given to us, problems, things that we need to overcome so that we can grow. I still have trials that I have to overcome, but the important thing is to find happiness and to actually make happiness.
Recently, Angie gave birth to her third child, David, and the happiness which his presence has brought to her is clear.
I've often wondered how come I was permitted to come back, and all I can really say about that is that I am filled with gratitude that I was. I don't know for sure. All I know is that I still had purpose here, and that I was important, especially to my children.
In her book, Beyond the Darkness, Angie chronicles her most amazing journey and details the information she was given about a scheme to land us all in hell.
One of the things that I was told is that there is a being of darkness, that he's very organized and that he has concourses of dark angels that assist him, and their main purpose is to thwart the plan of God, to direct those of us who are here in mortality to do harmful things.
But because of Angie's harrowing experience, she knows she can avoid the plans of the Prince of Darkness by living her life in the light. And by doing so, her life has improved immeasurably.
Yeah, life is great, and being in the light is wonderful.